Hi, it's Caitlin from Really Big Plant. Thank you so much for joining me.
Really big plant.
We are doing a really long-awaited repotting that I've been putting off for literally years. We are going to rescue my Philodendron giganteum over here. This plant, if you've been watching my channel for the past few years, first of all, thank you. This is, by the way, my 100th video. This Philodendron giganteum has been a main character on my channel for the past several years. I got it when it was teeny tiny. It was very small. It came really damaged. I wasn't even sure if it was gonna make it. It was so crushed up that I believe I even got a refund for it, which at this point I feel kind of bad about because, I mean, it is an amazing plant. It has grown into a huge honker of a plant and it's one of my absolute favorites. I potted this plant onto this pole years ago and it has now grown up to the top and it's kind of stopped growing and it's in a really precarious position. It's shamefully dirty. This wood stake that I believe has actually started to rot, has started to get very wobbly in its pot, and I really need to take it out of there. I've got it tied with a rope that is hooked around one of the legs of the stool that I have it on that's kind of like the plant stand. And then I also have this bottle of from like a milk jug that I kept from, you know, I just keep bottles and stuff, but I shoved it in there as like a support that's holding up the stake with the plant on it. It's turned to be facing the window. I don't even want to disturb it to turn it so that you can see how nice of a plant it is because I'm worried that if I turn it, it's gonna fall over. So that's no way to live. We're gonna repot it. I have devised a setup. I think I need to move around some of my furniture, put out a tarp. I got this little tripod thing that turns and tracks you, so woo, that's what's happening. Oh, by the way, look at this plant. I just put this over there temporarily. This is a Philodendron fuzzy petiole. And I got this at Lowe's. It was only $20, $19.98. And look at how big these leaves are. Woo! Oh wait, I need to untie the rope. It's tied to the stool. Should I take out the milk can or no? Whoa.
Leave it in there. Leave it in there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Can we do a 180 bead? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Oh gosh, what am I gonna do now? I should have set everything else up first. Crap. No, it can't. Hey, can you hold this up? Okay. Wow, it's amazing. It's so big. I didn't realize how big it had gotten because it had been up in the corner. Dang, look at how great this plant is, you guys. I don't know how I'm gonna get this out of here though. What am I gonna do? Lay it down on the back? Yep. I didn't even talk about my diabolical plan yet. Okay, so this is completely amazing. And now you can definitely see why I really need to repot this. You've done so well, Philodendron giganteum, and now we're gonna repot you. Okay, so I have a crazy setup that I have concocted that I need to bring over here. Okay, so I've got this rolly tray that's gonna be at the bottom of the setup. I ordered this on Amazon. I will put a link in my tray. And then I've got this huge heavy pot, which I'm gonna put on here. And then the pot has a hole, a drainage hole. I actually wanted a pot that didn't have a drainage hole because with a plant this big, I usually don't empty out a saucer full of water. I think when you buy plant pots that are this big, they usually have a drainage hole because like it's good to have drainage holes. But this one has gotten so big that I kind of want it to just contain water and not need to worry about water spilling out or needing to empty a saucer. I'm definitely not picking up this plant and taking it to the sink because it is so huge. So I just put a saucer on the outside of this pot, and then I'm also putting a saucer on the inside. We're gonna use this giant wood plank. It's really heavy, it's really big. Instead of putting it into the dirt with the plant, I put a plastic pot inside of the bigger pot, and then I'm gonna wedge the wood between the plastic pot and the outer pot, and that creates a little bit of a more stable setup, especially because I've got this huge 2x4 here, which I think is actually wider than a standard 2x4, and it is gonna not rock side to side as much. And everything's a really snug fit, so I'm gonna try to just wrestle everything into place right now. Take my plastic tray. That went in pretty easily because I tested out this setup and I already like creased the tray, but the first time I put that in there, I had to shove it really hard. And then I've got this black nursery pot, which is a 14 or 15 inch pot. The Giganteum is currently in a 10 inch, so it's a decent size up for this plant. Normally the rule is you don't want to size up more than an inch or two, but when you're sizing up from like a 10 inch pot, you can totally go into like a 14 or 15 inch. Proportionally, that's like a similar scale up when you go from like a 4 inch pot to a 6 inch pot. And shove this in here too. All right, and now I've got this set up with a pot, nursery pot inside of a bigger pot, and I've got this huge heavy wood plank in there, but it's not really gonna go anywhere. Once I get the plant in here and a ton of dirt, I think it's gonna be great. My bathroom, I keep my potting supplies back here. I've got this tub of coco coir here that's already expanded, and a big box of perlite. I've got this repti bark, which is like a reptile substrate. I bought this from Petco. Recently, I've been buying substrate from Petco. It's very clean. It's cleaner than a lot of like plant potting substrates I've found because it's meant for animals. I've noticed that these types of products that come from the pet store that are intended for a substrate for like something to live in tend to have fewer bugs and things like that. I kind of stopped using orchid bark because I've noticed that whenever I would put orchid bark into my potting mixes, I'd get tons of little crawlies. I mean, some of them are beneficial, like you get the little springtails and stuff, but personally in my home, I would rather not have bugs. If I can eliminate the presence of insects wherever possible, I try to do that. And so buying the bark and potting substrate from Petco has actually been something that's helped with that. What is it? Natural reptile bedding, 100% fir bark, as in F-I-R, like fir trees. And it's amazing because it's been just like sitting wet. It's like moist in the bag, but it just smells like the forest. You can kind of see the size of it. Bark like this is like my ideal soil amendment of choice because it's lightweight, so it doesn't like sink to the bottom. I used to buy a lot of potting mix that had a lot of little rocks mixed in, and over time it kind of separates into the like finer stuff and then the rocks which settle to the bottom. Bark, orchid bark, and this type of stuff really is very lightweight. It mixes in really nicely with something as fine as the dehydrated coco coir. I've also got this coco coir. This is also like a reptile substrate. It's not what I have in this bin right now. It's actually slightly lighter in color than this really dark stuff I've got in here. I will show you what this looks like. I expanded a bunch of it last night in case I needed some more for this repotting. The coco coir, usually you don't need to worry about bugs in it because it comes compressed. It's totally dehydrated. Not many things can survive that. I'm amending this with the bark this time because I'm gonna be potting this plant into a huge pot. The volume of soil is so large that it sort of compresses down on itself, and it can create a situation where the soil at the bottom gets very, very compacted, and that can be bad for the roots because it creates an anaerobic environment, which basically means there's no oxygen there. And that is pretty much the leading cause of root rot. So you don't want to have situations where you have areas in your pot that the dirt is so compacted that no air can get through. So putting in a soil amendment like bark, pieces of bark where you have something a little bit chunkier, it creates an environment where air pockets can naturally just kind of form because the bark holds its own structure. So that's really good for plant roots. I'm gonna just start filling this. Should maybe plug some of the holes. I'm whiling out with these screens. I'm putting one of them in front of each huge hole. Okay, now it's time for the fun part, the plant. I have no idea how I'm gonna get this out of here. What am I gonna do? I have no idea how I'm gonna... Okay, I've got this L square. It's just like a ruler, because I don't know what else to use to try to shove in here. So hot. Ah. I did not think this out well. Wow, do you see this? Look at all those roots. Ah, this needs a repotting so badly. Some rope Got this from Lowe's. It's just coconut fiber. Using lots of coconut fiber. Cut some pieces. I'm gonna get these ready. I know that this plant clearly needs some extra support, so. Whoa. Whoa. We got this. I can do it. We're gonna power through. We can persevere. We got this. All right, I'd be lying if I said that was easy. That was amazing. Got it in the pot. I'm not done yet. This stool was some quick thinking because I didn't know how else I was gonna support it. I should have brought over a pillow. I was considering using one of my animals, but I didn't want to get it all dirty, so we went with the stool instead. That didn't work. Perfect. It's so stable. So I just need to clear a path and wheel it back into the corner now. Okay, I'm so glad it's over here now. I feel like it looks great. Let me move you a little closer so you can see. Doesn't it look great over here now? I'm super pleased. I was worried that the wood plank was gonna stick out like a sore thumb, but it kind of just looks normal. I like it a lot. And it's at a better height now because the plant kind of reached the top of its light in this window area. So now it can grow upwards again, and I think it's gonna get huge, and hopefully it's gonna love it in here. Hooray, let me stand back here next to it so you can see how big it is in this pot. Can you guys believe how big this plant is now? I took the roots, the aerial roots that weren't growing lots of little fibrous roots into the pot, which it turns out there were a lot of them. I took those and I kind of tied up the plant in the back to the pole without girdling the plant around in the front, if that makes sense. I kind of just like tied the roots around behind the plank. One thing I should talk about, what to expect after doing a repotting like this. If within the next month or two, if I drop lower leaves from this plant, I'm not gonna be concerned. Given the fact that I did do some damage to this plant during the repotting, which is totally a thing that's to be expected when you repot a big plant like this. If I do lose some of these lower leaves, if they sort of turn yellow and shrivel up, that's just the plant falling back on some of its own resources as it continues to grow. While it might be healing its roots, the plant knows that it's got water, it's got nutrients, it's got a bunch of things it already needs within its leaves. And plants are really good at kind of like triaging, where they will kill off some of their lower leaves to give the nutrients and the moisture to the new growth. The nutrients in plants, some of them are said to be mobile and some are said to be immobile. And what that means is some nutrients like nitrogen can be redistributed throughout the plant from one part of the plant to another, which is why as new leaves come in, sometimes old leaves die, because what's happening is the nutrients from those older leaves are being given to the newer growth. And so that can also be a sign that your plant needs more fertilization. Anyway, yeah, I did want to just point out that if you are doing a huge repotting, if you see a little bit of unhappiness in your plant over the next few weeks, that's totally normal. As long as your new growth is coming out and you're not having the new growth tip shrivel up, and as long as it's not on like every leaf on the plant, that is to be expected and is totally normal. All right. It looks so much better now. I can't stop staring at it. Like it even more than I thought I would. I feel like it looks great in the white pot. It just looks so much better without the string everywhere tying it up. I don't have this little random milk jug in there anymore. Looking so good. On to the next thing. Okay. And I have this Ficus alii that I want to repot. It's a Ficus maclelandii cultivar alii that I got from Home Depot earlier this year, and it's in a tiny, tiny pot for how big the plant is, and it's thirsty all the time, so I think I need to repot it into something slightly bigger. Let me show you. You see how small this pot is? It's really tiny. It's like an 8-inch pot, and the plant is pretty big. I'm trying to decide if I should put it in the pot that I just took the giganteum out of, or should I put it into something different? Let me go see. Wow, look at these roots. They've grown to the shape of the outer pot this was in. Okay, I feel like it looks really cute in here, so we're gonna do it in this pot. It does not have a drainage hole, but that's okay. All right, on a technicality, having a drainage hole and then sitting in a tray that you never empty is still better than being in a closed container with 0 drainage hole. Like when you have a plant in a pot with a drainage hole and it sits in a tray full of water, the water can still evaporate from the tray. It's not like the water is trapped in the bottom of a pot where it completely can't escape. Like the bottom of the pot might be sitting in some water and there might be a little bit of waterlogged area around the roots, but there's still an exit route for the water when it's sitting in a tray full of water. Versus when I plant this straight in here, which I'm still gonna do, this bottom part of the pot is gonna take a long time to dry out, and I know for myself that because I'm kind of an underwaterer, I'm probably not gonna overwater this plant, but there is definitely more of a risk anytime you plant a plant into a pot without a drainage hole. Most of the time, adding in rocks or something big to the bottom of the pot to create drainage doesn't actually create drainage. It just adds rocks to the bottom of your pot, especially if you're working with a medium like coco coir, like this dehydrated coco coir stuff that I'm working with. It's really fine. It's really small. So even if you fill the bottom of your pot with rocks, the substrate is gonna find its way into the rocks and it's just gonna be wet down there. So really what you're doing when you add rocks in is you're just decreasing the volume in the pot, and that can be a legitimate way to create a situation where you don't have so much water stuck in the bottom because you took up volume with a solid material. And so by decreasing the volume, you can create a situation where the plant soil area dries out faster just because there's less soil there. But there's this sort of like imagined idea that you put in rocks and then it creates this separate layer where water can be where there's no soil, and it doesn't really actually work like that. Like in our imagination, it works like that. Sometimes for like terrariums where you can see through the wall, you put a gravel layer at the bottom and you can keep that full of water, and that's a little bit different than putting gravel at the bottom of a closed pot and hoping that there's like a reservoir there. So anyway, there's my rant about drainage. We're gonna pot this straight into this non-draining pot anyway. Let's get this out of here. Oh, this is going way more easily than I thought it would. I thought I was gonna have to cut the pot open, but it might be okay. Such a small soil ball that I'm just holding it by the trunk But if the soil ball was like any heavier, if it was just a little bit heavier, I wouldn't feel comfortable holding it up like this because you don't want the root ball to rip away from the plant. But I can just tell from holding it that the soil ball is very well attached to the bottom of the plant and it's not very heavy. So I think it's okay to be holding it up like this. Okay, so ficus are not super huge fans of having their roots disturbed, so I didn't do too much. I just kind of broke up the root ball a little bit where it seemed like the roots were wrapping around and around, but I'm gonna pretty much just leave it as it is. Okay, I really hope potting that in there was not a huge mistake without a drainage hole, so we will find out, but I think it's gonna be happy. It looks great. I love it in this pot. It's kind of an ornate looking little antique kind of like Italian looking pot. It's like a little lion with a knocker in its mouth. Venetian, I like it. So anyway, okay, we've got that Ficus alii in there. We're looking good. Perfect. On to the next thing. Okay, whew, just gonna have some McDonald's. But also, I just remembered that I wanted to show this to you guys. Look at this. This is my Thaumatophyllum, Philodendron bipinnatifidum, but look at this one leaf. Do you see? It's almost a half moon. Okay, I'm gonna put it down. This is what we're doing next. The big alocasia. Okay, so I've got this alocasia here. This is an alocasia metalhead. And I bought that from Stater Brothers, I believe, shortly after I moved to this house, and it is smaller now than it was when I first bought it. It had leaves that were like this big, and this thing got really bad spider mites, and then I treated it a couple of times. I thought it was gonna die, like all of the leaves collapsed, and it finally has put out some new growth recently. So I've got these big leaves on here. I did not think it was going to recover, and there's like a baby plant popping out down there. So what I want to do is just stick it into this pot. I've got this fountain-shaped pot over here that I got from Lowe's. I've just had this sitting out like this in this plastic pot, and it just doesn't look great. So I want to put it in here. This is a little thing that I got from the outdoor section at Lowe's. It comes apart in two halves. This does not have a drainage hole, but I've been having trouble keeping this as moist as it needs to be because the nursery pot that this plant came in has like a little bit of a lift. There's like these little plastic pieces on the bottom that elevate it. So that's good for the plant because it doesn't let it sit in water. But I guess the theme of today's repotting is that my plants all need more water. This is always the theme of my repottings, I guess, for me personally. My plants need more water, so I'm gonna put it into this pot without a drainage hole. And I do have some little baby new growth coming up on this plant, so I'm gonna just try to carefully transfer this and not really disturb it, because alocasias and colocasias, ones that grow rhizomatically from bulbs, a lot of times when you repot them, you find all sorts of bulbs in the soil, and I want this to actually just continue growing, so I'm gonna just transfer it without disturbing the soil if possible. We should take it over to my tarp. Okay, I just mixed up a little bit of a barky perlite mix to put in there. I just wanted to transfer the entire soil ball into this other pot without increasing the soil volume too much. It's like wet right here, and then it's dry here, and it's wet here. So it wasn't getting watered thoroughly enough. The water was running through and then just like sort of moistening where I poured it and then out the bottom where it spilled out. So I think this actually has enough soil. I don't really want to add too much more. So I'm just going to take this whole thing and I'm going to plop it right in there. I added just enough dirt to level off the bottom. All right. Okay, that was a bit of an unorthodox repotting, but I'm gonna just leave it like that because that's how we roll. Hooray! My Alocasia metalhead looking great in here now, or at least it's looking a lot better than it was in its previous pot. So hooray, I feel great about that. For real, this is seriously like a deluxe repotting video. Like all of these plants got so elevated into either like a really fancy little pot or like a really nice setup. Like this isn't just any old nursery pot repotting. These were some quality repottings. I'm excited for these plants. I feel so happy and accomplished, especially mainly about my Philodendron giganteum. It is one of my favorite plants. It really has a huge spot in my heart, and I feel so happy to see it looking so good and not so precarious anymore. So hooray. And the Ficus alii is moving on up in the world. Plus, my Alocasia, which looks so amazing in its little fountain pot. I'm really loving the urn-shaped pots. I was calling it a fountain pot, but it's kind of, you know, that bowl shape with the stand. I feel like it's so elevated looking. I'm just really loving putting things into pots that are shaped that way. It always is such an undertaking to repot a huge plant, so I feel like you've got to really work yourself up to it mentally, at least for me. I feel like I need to like give myself a pep talk for like a whole day. So I'm really glad that I persevered. Hopefully the lack of drainage holes on all of these is gonna be okay. I will check with moisture meters. I recently just ordered a 10-pack of them. Sometimes you can find them in bulk for pretty cheap. I found a 10-pack for $35. I will link to it on Amazon if it's still available. So yeah, I would love to hear from you on what big plants you've repotted recently or what you are dreading repotting. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you are having a fantastic planty week and that your plants are bringing you joy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye. Bonus hour, you've been looking at these stuffed animals this whole time. No one knows what this is. Is it a bear? Is it a mochi? Leaf? Gator? Another gator? A big terrifying white moth? This Shiba, which doesn't match the room but goes underneath the giant flat seal. I got this for me like before we got married. All right, you guys, that is it for this repotting. It was awesome.